to another tutorial video. Today's one is in conjunction with Tonic Craft Kit number 70, which is a lifetime of adventure, and all of the elements that you get in Tonic Craft Kit are this beautiful memory book die set, and if you check out yesterday's video you'll see a full unboxing of everything that's in this month's kit. But you get the memory book die set. You also get your gorgeous little Lifetime of Adventure sticker. You've got your little stamp set as well, which we might use some of the elements from this to enhance some of our cards if they dry in time. I'll show you how to do that as well. You also get a tape pen, you get a gorgeous selection of cardstock, you get one of these 6x6 pads again, and 7 sheets of full A4 sheets as well. And then we're also getting Nuvo wise, which is what we're using in this tutorial. We're getting a full-sized embellishment mousse in High Tide, a full-size stone drop, which is the Lady Liberty colour, and then also a double pack of the Craft Perfect low tack die tape, which I'm going to use as more of like a stencil tape for the different techniques that I'm going to show you in this tutorial as well. So it's in conjunction with Tonic Craft Kit number 70, but you could do this without the kit as well. We're mostly just focusing on the die tape, the stone drops and the Nuvo embellishment mousse, or you could use any other Nuvo products that you have as well. They'd work really nicely for this. So what I'm going to show you how to do in this tutorial video is, first of all, just using the die tape to mask and create a striped background, and also showing you how you can add thicker Nuvo embellishment mousse as well, rather than just sort of like ink blending, which you definitely could do with your ink pads as well. It doesn't have to be Nuvo mousse, I'm just using what was in the kit. But you can definitely just use the die tape as a stencil tape to mask off different areas, and because it is such a low tack tape, it does not peel the surface of your card off. I haven't found it to do it to any of the card that I've been using over the past like month or so that I've had some of this tape, and it's fantastic. It really doesn't peel the card off. I do find it's not quite as sticky enough for me for die cutting because of the way that I die cut, but for regular die cutting, if you're just cutting, you know, one die at a time and you're not having to cut so many things at the same time because you're making all sorts of different bits and pieces, it's perfect for your die cutting as well. But if you have another tape that you love for your die cutting, but you get some of this in your kit and you want a different way to use it, then you can use it for this kind of like masking kind of idea as well. So I'm going to show you how to do the stripey effect. I'm also going to show you how to like mask off a square area and do a kind of like textured sort of piece in the centre of this, which I feel like looks like a little art print that you might find on like a gallery wall. It kind of looks like it's a canvas on a gallery wall with the little Wanderlust word underneath there as well. And then I'm also going to show you how to do that kind of thing but using a torn edge of your tape as well, and we're actually using the same piece of tape and tearing it and using one above and one below, so you actually get like a consistent little channel like this. But you could definitely tear a longer piece and move it along to make it a different shape, or you could tear 2 different pieces if you want to as well, and use them in that respect too. So first of all, let's go with the easier, simpler kind of one and just get a piece of card ready. And the way I was getting the positioning right for this is I'm using the grid behind me. I rarely ever actually use the grid on my mat. I kind of just don't even see it. Like, I'm so used to the surface I don't even really see that it's got the grids on there, but I'm using it to mark up how far between these pieces of tape that I want to be. The tape is roughly 3 of those squares. It is a tiny bit wider than 3 of those squares, but it works nicely to go with 3 of those squares as the other measurement. So we're going to line this up along a thick line so we can see it easily, and then we're going to go 3 squares up, and then we're going to put the tape going across. So tear a little piece of it off, or use the tape dispenser if you've bought one of those, or any tape dispenser that you have, it should fit into, and then you can go and press that down, and you can burnish this as much as you like and it does not rip the surface of your card. It's fantastic, this tape. So we've got the first one at 3 squares up, then we've got our next piece of tape. So what I'm going to do is line up that piece of tape with a line, and then I'm going to go 3 squares up from that to get a consistent width for our Nuvo mousse stripes on here. Then again, I'm going to manoeuvre the card and line the top of that tape up with another grid line, and then take a final piece and then put this 3 squares up as well. So we're now ending up with 4 Nuvo stripes and 3 masked off white stripes, but you could have started up here and go 4 masked off stripes and 3 Nuvo stripes if you'd rather as well. Or obviously if you're using a larger piece of card, then you know you can go for however many stripes you want to, and you can also do it in the opposite direction and create a gridded pattern if you want to as well. So lots of different ways of using this. If you're accurate with your cutting and using like a craft knife and a metal edge ruler, you could even cut this into thinner strips and almost kind of create like a ginghamy plaid kind of pattern as well. So next step for this, you could definitely just ink blend onto this straight away, but for me I'm going to go with the Nuvo Mousse. Now you don't want to go straight from your pot, because I mean sometimes we have a slightly crusty Nuvo Mousse that we've sort of left for a little while and it's not quite as juicy as a fresh pot. This is an older pot as well. I'm not actually using a fresh pot. This is one that's been open for however long since the Blue Blossom colour trend came out. That's how long this has been open. But you don't want to use it straight from the pot, because it does have more of like a crumbly kind of consistency. Not necessarily when it is a brand new pot, but when you have been using it for a little while, it's slightly more crumbly. So before you use it, or if it is an older pot and you want to add a little bit of water to it, you want to put some on your mat and use a metal palette knife, because it's stronger to mix than one of the silicone spatulas or the media spatulas. And just mix it up like this, so you're turning it into a really gorgeous creamy consistency, and this is going to work better for our ink blending. And then I've also just put a sponge on one of my mini ink blending tools. I have let this dry and it is still kind of squishy, not as squishy as the real sponge would have been, but it is still kind of squishy, so I can still use this for another background or two. But if you would rather, you know, elongate the life of your foams, you can definitely just put this in a pot of water and squeeze it out, you know, and clean this out as well before it dries. But you want to load up your sponge. I'd go from the palette knife to begin with, and if you just keep working it in, you can sort of load it up really nicely so it's got an even coverage of the mousse onto the top of the sponge. And then all we're going to do is just use this as if we were ink blending. So we can just go in a circular motion, ink blending across here. And then you can top up your tool as much as you need to as well. So because this is dried on here, it's not sort of holding as much mousse as it would have done if it was a fresh sponge. But we can just drag this across to do our first stripe, and it's a little bit patchy, so we're going to do 3 layers in total. And by the time you've got down to the bottom of the card and you have done the other stripes, the top one will be dry enough to go over with a second coat. So it's really nice using this Nuvo Mousse. It dries. It doesn't always dry like really quickly. If you're using it thickly, it's not going to dry that quickly. But it dries much quicker if you're just using a thin application, as we are when we're kind of like ink blending with it. So just add a little bit more onto the sponge as we keep going, and just bring this all over, just smoothing it out. Doesn't matter if there are lines in it, because we're going to add more layers over the top of this as well. And we can just finish off that last little corner. I think I need a tiny bit more. Going right up to the tape, so we're going to get nice straight lines up to the tape as well. And you can just come back in, load up your sponge again, go for a second layer on the top there. Just keep building it up until you've got the coverage that you want. Because we're using a dark mousse onto white cardstock, you are still going to keep seeing that white through it unless you build up 3 layers. I find 3 layers is a good amount if you're using it thinly. If you're using it thickly, then it's totally fine. But using it in a thin fashion, 3 thinner layers works really nicely for building up that beautiful colour. So we can just build this up, final 3rd layer on these stripes, and just keep adding to it, final one, and then you've got your beautiful pearlescent stripes on your panel of card. We could actually go back on a little bit here, I couldn't see that at the angle I was looking at it, but there's a little bit of patchiness just there. So if there's anywhere that is patchy, you can just add a little bit extra on top of there as well. So we've got our 3 or 4 even beautiful pearlescent stripes on there. Now you definitely can just leave it as this, but when I was doing the original card, I wanted to see how this would work with a thicker application of mousse on here as well. So I'm going to scoop up some of this mousse onto one of the media spatulas. I just find these are nice. They've got a good flex to them, so you can do like a nice swoosh of mousse onto here, and it works really nicely. So I've got my mousse onto there. I'm just going to hold this down and do a big swoosh of mousse across here. You can see how well that tape is holding down of me going across it in the wrong kind of direction as well. So just put as much on as you want, go across it as many times as you want to get the effect that you're looking for. So I think that looks good. And then I have been pulling the tape off while it's still wet. I don't know what would happen if we let this dry and then tried to pull the tape off. It might actually just pull all of the Nuvo product off, like it might sort of peel off because this is a thicker layer on top of it. I'm not sure, but I have just been pulling it off when it's wet. Like when you're painting walls, they say take the painter's tape off when the last coat's still wet. So we can peel this off to reveal our gorgeous crisp lines, and it's still let us have a thicker layer of mousse on there, but still giving us that beautiful crisp ink blended kind of line with our Nuvo mousse as well. So we can peel those off, and we've got our beautiful striped background, which for my finish card I just, when it was dry, added on a little bit of stamping, and you can see just how easy it is to turn this beautiful background into a gorgeous little travel themed card. And I thought it was perfect adding the little boats, so it kind of looked like these are strips of water, and then the little boats are sailing across the top. You've got the little aeroplanes flying around, and then you've got the little happy travels as the sentiment there, and then using those 2 dies to create a little frame from whichever one of the metallic cardstocks you feel like matches your card the best as well. So that is the first background, and obviously I'm showing you this with mousse, but it can definitely just be with inks as well. All of these techniques I'm showing you with mousse, but you can do it just with inks, or maybe try crackle mousse as well, and then when this dries you'll get a beautiful crackle kind of effect. This would give like a crazed effect, and then this would give a crackled effect. Or you could do the background with a normal Nuvo embellishment mousse and bring crackle or expanding mousse over the top and do this, and then you could heat it as well and get a different effect that way too. So that's the first one. I'll tidy up a little bit and then we'll come back and show you the next technique. So the next card is this one, showing you how to mask off more of like a square focal point kind of element. So first of all, we can come back to our tape again. I am using fresh tape because the other stuff is like covered in mousse. So this is kind of a more of like maybe a wasteful kind of way of using your tape, but it's also just a cool different technique. If you were just using inks on this, you could definitely reuse it. It has got a slick surface, so you might want to wipe it off first, so you're not like touching this, getting an inky fingerprint and putting it down on your cardstock. But using Nuvo stuff, you kind of is just more of like a one-use kind of a tape. But because we're getting it in the craft kit and you're getting 2 rolls of it, you can use one for more mixed media applications and one for your die cutting if you want to. So, first piece of tape, we're going to line it up with the edge of our cardstock and press it down really nicely. Then we're going to take a second piece of tape and do the same thing on the opposite side. And mask that off. And then for the top portion, you can definitely just go straight across the top and do an even border. I actually did mine slightly further down, so I just put it just a slight bit further down, left like 3 or 4 millimeters and brought that down there. And then you can just eyeball and decide, you know, like where do you usually put your elements on your card? Do you want it to be a full panel? Do you want to make this come all the way down to here? We could do that actually. I've got enough tape there. Let's make it even from the bottom of the card as well. So you can do a completely full panel on your card, which could then be a landscape card if you wanted to as well, or you can do it up higher and just do a square portion for your card too, so whichever way you want to do it. So we've got our shape masked off. I'm going to need a bit more mousse, so I'm going to take some more out of the pot and make it into a lovely creamy consistency like we did before. You can see there, it's kind of crumbly when you bring it out, but if you work it into a gorgeous creamy consistency, add water if you need to, you know, if it is an older pot of mousse, you might need to add some water to get it to be that beautiful creamy consistency. But we can just bring this out, work it into a lovely smooth paste. And I do recommend a metal palette knife for this. I just find it easier for mixing than with the media spatula. It just works better for mixing. So we've got gorgeous creamy consistency of that now. I'm going to need another spatula as well. So we've got our mousse there now. I've got another clean spatula, and for this one I'm going to go with the stone drops first. So I'm going to put stone drops on first and then come in with the mousse afterwards to create this kind of effect, where I've got the stone drops in the upper sort of third and then the mousse in the bottom 2/3. But I'm going to come slightly further down with the stone drops, so when we bring the mousse back in we can blend it a little bit, and it's not going to look too like you're not going to take over too much of the stone drop. Although I'm thinking maybe a slight diagonal would look nice as well. So we're going to take the Lady Liberty, shake it down to the nozzle, and squirt a decent amount out onto our spatula, and then just wipe this across the card, filling up from edge to edge for that little box that we've created. You can add more as you feel like you need it as well. The great thing about getting extra ones of Nuvo drops and stuff in Tonic craft kits is you can then experiment with more of these different techniques as well, because you might already have the Lady Liberty drop in your stash. You might have bought it recently in the sales on the Tonic website. It's been only on there for £1, so you might have bought it recently and want to experiment with some of these stone drops, and you can definitely do that if you've got them at a really good deal. So that's the stone drop we've added on there. It's going right up to the borders, and we've got thick and thin areas of it, and we've got a sort of diagonal aspect to it. So now we can take our same spatula that we were using before for our Nuvo mousse, and we can bring this in this bottom section. We're just working to get it in a good coverage first, and then we can build up the thickness of it and add some textural kind of lines to it as well. So we can just spread this across, get it to touch the stone drops as well, and then we can start building up a little bit extra if we want to make it really thick in some areas, and then we can do what I did on my original one and sort of try and not really blend them, but kind of make more of like a haphazard line where they meet each other, and just sort of move your spatula around to kind of get whatever textury finishes you want in the actual mousse itself as well. And remember, that kind of mix of the stone drops looks really cool as well. So if some of it does come down into your mousse, it gives it a cool texture too. So you can kind of mix it together like this. You could pat it like this to get a peaky kind of texture as well if you want that kind of a finish, or you can spread it around and get more of like a wave kind of finish if we are sort of thinking this looks like the sea and a little bit of land as well. So now we've done that, you can definitely come in here and sprinkle glitter and confetti into this as well, but I'm going for that kind of abstract landscape kind of a look like I got on the original card, so I'm going to leave it as it is, but we can peel off and reveal our gorgeous crisp lines, even though that was like a thicker amount of different Nuvo products, and a stone drop is wetter than a Nuvo mousse and it still didn't bleed underneath. We can just peel off those side pieces of tape to reveal our gorgeous crisp area of Nuvo products. It just looks so cool as well. I just really love how this turned out, and obviously you can do this with any colour scheme as well to make it look different. You could then come back in with a die cut sentiment to go over the top of this. You could just have a die as a focal point on the top of this as well. All sorts of different things that you could do to sort of accent this and turn it into your finished card as well. Again, a doodled border around the edge. You could bring those two dies back in and have a gorgeous narrow border around this as well, especially if you've done the whole panel on the card. You could then have that gorgeous narrow border from the original card that I showed you with the stripes as well. But really pretty. I love this. Just looks so cool. And you could embed different things into this. You can have it whichever way up you want it as well. I just really, really like the mixture of the mousse and the stone drops too. I just think it's a really cool kind of effect. So that's the second kind of way of like masking off a border. This could have been even all the way around as well if you wanted to. I just went with that slightly extra gap on the top and bottom, but it definitely could have been even. You just line your tape up with those outside edges and then you can perfectly get an even rectangle, the equidistant from all of the edges of your card as well. So that's that one that I've got to find somewhere to leave it to dry. And then the final one that I did in my little samples was showing how to mask but using a torn edge of the tape. So for this one, we want to take, I'm going to do it longer this time. When I did the original one, I only took a piece that was as long as my card, so my torn pieces are exactly above and below each other. It looks like a continuous, you know, this little bit dips in as that bit dips up. But this one, I'm going to show you how you can tear it all the way along. So you're literally just holding it as you go, moving your fingers as you go, otherwise you might tear it off into a skinny little piece and come off the edge of the tape. But just keep tearing it, going up and down a little bit as much as you want to. And then, because we've got a longer piece of tape, we can now take one of these pieces and place it where we want to on the card. You can definitely use your grid lines to get that bottom line straight as well. And pull that across. Press that nice and firmly, because we know with this tape it's a lovely low tack, it's not going to rip our cardstock. And then the second piece of tape, instead of putting it exactly above and below, because we made it longer, we can move it across to the side, so we're going to get a different tear above and below on this card. And again, you can line up with the grid lines on your mat to get that to be like equidistant all the way across if you want it to be as well. And then, because we are working, you know, with like messy mediums and we've got a big spatula, we don't want to go over these edges. So for this, I am just going to take another couple of pieces of the tape just to protect the rest of the card as well. So I didn't get a long enough piece there, but we just put that on there like that, just to protect the rest of the card, because we just want the product to be in this central section. And again, for this one, I went with the stone drops on the top and then the Nuvo Mousse on the bottom. So I'm going to do that again because I liked how that looked. So again, Lady Liberty onto our palette knife as much as you, I mean, you go less first because otherwise you can't really put it back in the bottle. And then just spread it out onto your card. And the good thing about having that tape there is we can scrape it back off the tape and back into our work as well. So we're not going like, we've got all of that tape to stop us getting onto the card, but we don't have to leave all of the product on that tape as well. We can, you know, pull it back into our piece of work. And then just finish this off with that gorgeous Lady Liberty stone drop. Get that beautiful texture on there. And then we've got our mousse again, so we can come back in with our embellishment mousse, again get it into a nice creamy consistency. And then you can see here how you need that extra piece of tape here, because otherwise you would have put it onto that bottom piece of the card. Because we've got a wide spatula and we're working with a narrow area, it's much easier if you've masked off anywhere where you don't want the product to go. And again, I really like this mixed kind of look, so I'm sort of deliberately mixing this in a little bit as I go. And then bringing some more mousse into there. Again, this can be as thick as you want, because we know that that tape is going to be able to cope with thick mediums as well, which is nice. And I also think, I haven't tried it, but years ago, I was making tons of cards. I think it was when I first got my Misty and I bought an Alter New layering rose kind of stamp set, and I kept using the same pieces of tape, and because they were like a paper tape, just like a cheapy post-it kind of thing, the ink was seeping through it. But because this has got like a plasticky coating on the top, I reckon it would be really good for that kind of technique as well, if you're reusing the same piece of tape for lots of masking and stamping, or using coloured inks as masking as well. If you've ever done that kind of thing and found that it leaks through the tape, I think this tape would be fantastic for that kind of thing as well. Just on a random note, I just thought of that. But yeah, just putting the rest of this mousse onto here, mixing some of the stone drops with the mousse because it looks really cool when you do that, and getting like a natural or organic kind of edge between the two of them I think looks really good, just like poking it with your silicone spatula to get that kind of a look. So now we've got that kind of effect, we can then reveal our torn edge to our project as well. Actually, I might want to take this piece off first and then reveal the torn edge. So we can, it's got like a really thick edge in some places on here, but look at that cool torn random edge that we've got on there now. It looks really good, and I just got some mousse on my original card. And then take off the straight piece here, and then reveal the other torn edge as well. And you can see when I'm pulling this away, actually I'm kind of holding it lower to the card and pulling away from the product as well, rather than pulling it into the product. And there we go, we've got our gorgeous random torn piece there, and you can see on the original one how I finished it off and put the sentiment across the top of it, and you can see the difference between having the exact same torn pieces in the same place or having it slightly more organic where the tear is a bit different across the whole thing as well. So those are the two kind of variations on that technique. This one I think I put more stone drop than the mousse, but you can definitely play around with the different effects, and if you drag more of the stone drop onto the mousse you get that beautiful effect as well. So that's the third one. I was only just going to show you those three, but actually because I've got some stuff left out on my desk, I might as well show you how I created this kind of card as well, because this was just using up the leftovers. So to do that, again, we're going to go with our mousse that's on here. This isn't using the tape, it's just using up the leftover mousse and some extra stone drops on there. But all I did was get that into a lovely creamy consistency again, and then take my spatula and just scrape it across the card. Now this has got a little bit of stone drop mixed into it, so it's kind of giving that extra texture to it as well, but literally just scrape it around, and it just gave this really cool rough wave kind of look, which is what I went with for the whole sort of like design of the card. I went with that rough wave kind of look and then put the little boat in there as well, but just bringing it round and doing a really rough, like almost like it looks like a paintbrush has done it, kind of a swoosh on your card there. Then for the stone drop part of it, I just came back in, put some more stone drops onto my palette knife, and then just carefully put this over the top, so it was more not mixing it in, just more of like a thick layer of the stone drop over the top of the mousse, just to give it a different kind of a look. And then because I had put oh, it's a bit more left on there, I can get that off. Because I put the stone drop on top of the mousse there, I felt like I wanted more stone drop in there. So, squeeze some, sorry, this is my original bottle, so it's getting quite empty now. Squeeze some onto your glass mat, add a little bit of water to it, and then paintbrush wise, I'm using the paintbrush that I ruined a while back. I don't know what I did to it actually. I think I left some Nuvo product to dry in it, and this is what happens to a paintbrush if you leave Nuvo product to dry in it. It goes all hard and crispy and sticks all of the bristles together. So definitely wash your paintbrush, but I'm just going to use this one because I've already ruined it. Mix that together. You can see it goes a little bit milky looking because it's the sort of like the binders in the stone drop. They've got like a milky finish to them until it dries. And if you add water to it, you see that coming out. But basically mix that up and then get real gloopy bits on your brush and just splat them onto the card. And you might think, oh, I'm not going to get much of that stone drop texture when you do this. You kind of feel like, oh, it's just, you know, it's just like a liquidy splash, as if you'd watered down Nuvo mousse or something. But when you do actually let it dry, you get this beautiful stone drop texture on there as well. It does have all of that beautiful texture in there. So that's kind of how I created that card as well. So you got a bonus card of how I used up the excess Nuvo product. So I'm going to clean this up and then I'll come back and finish the video for you. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial video showing you how I used some of the Nuvo product from craft kit number 30 along with the die tape that we're getting in the kit to create some different cards using the Nuvo mousse and the stone drops as well, and using the die tape to mask off a torn edge, a neat sort of square piece, and to do stripes on a project as well, and then also how to use your leftovers of any of the Nuvo products that you've been using as well. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next one.